I'm calling the Budget Committee meeting to order at 5:08. Stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I'll take roll call. Counselor Augsburger. Here. Counselor Bronson.
Here.
Counselor Hagee.
Here.
Counselor Richards.
Here.
Counselor Sanchez.
Here.
President Pro Tem Thorstad.
Here.
Mayor Coleman.
Present.
Chair Miller.
Here.
Committee Member Dahl. Here. Committee Member Brianna. Committee Member Bechtel. Committee Member Gerson. And Committee Member White. Do you want to recognize anyone for public comment?
Okay.
Not the script yet.
Huh?
Not the script yet, just
Not
public
the
comment.
script yet. So I open the floor for public comment.
And hearing none, we will move on.
Thank you. Moving on. And we are moving on here to Matt.
You do the public hearing? Or is that the?
There were a couple of items for follow-up from last night, so I just wanted to provide a response to those. So Counselor Bronson, you had asked about the timing for the potential state gas tax proposal. So if it goes through as planned, it would be an 8-cent increase beginning January 1st, 2026, and it would go up a total of 20 cents over 6 years, staggering every 2 years. And so once those revenues go through, I believe we receive them monthly, correct? Okay, so yes, we would see those come through monthly. So that's the answer to that question. And then
So rather direct that if it goes through.
yes.
So, okay, thank you.
And then with regards to Weddle Bridge, I went back through our records. And so when we had the visual inspection, their preliminary cost estimate was about $90,000, but that didn't include engineering, painting, or permitting. And that was a pretty high level estimate. And then when we had more in-depth discussions with the Lynn County Road Department last year regarding their work on the Shamanic Bridge, they helped us work through the line items and do some inflationary adjustments, and they're recommending a minimum of $400,000 for that budget to restore. That would include painting, but probably not engineering or permitting. So yes, $500,000 is probably closer. But I literally just received a response from the state. We have cleared the first hurdle for relisting of historic designation for Weddle Bridge. So we will be meeting with the state to work through next steps and see what other documentation we need to submit to try to get it relisted. So that's very positive.
Chair, can I ask a question?
Go ahead.
Okay, so regarding that historical designation, I had heard something that it wasn't eligible because it was no longer at the original site. It was relocated. Is that true statement or?
That is not a true statement. So I was actually, when I was looking at grants, I was looking at historic grants, and I went onto the state register to see if there was any other site in Sweet Home that might be eligible. But when I opened the file for Weddle Bridge, there was an ODOT opinion from, I believe, like 2001, where they stated they found that it might be eligible for relisting. So that's why I reinitiated with the state. And if there are no further questions about the presentation from last night, I believe we can move on to the public hearing. Okay, go for it, Chair Miller.
So the public hearing regarding the spending of state shared revenue sharing is now open at 5:12. For the fiscal year 2025-2026, all shared revenues are received in the general fund and spent on general government services. Or comments from those in support of the matter shall be first. Comments from those in opposition to the matter shall be next. Comments from those who are neutral shall be last. Is there anyone here to provide comment? The public hearing regarding the spending of state shared revenue sharing for fiscal year 2025-2026 is now closed at 5:13.
So the next item on the agenda is the approval of the tax rate and local option levy. The motions are there in the presentation for someone to make. After there's a motion, there's a second. Any discussion or moving on to an official voting of the motion that is made. So if anybody would like to make that motion.
So moved. Second that.
Chair, can we have discussion?
Yes.
Can you explain the permanent property tax rate and did it change or?
So the permanent property tax rate stays the same at $1.41 and 1.4157. That's the same as it always has been. You as a city organization do not have the authority really to increase the property tax rate from $1.41. You do have the option to collect less if you want, but you cannot raise it. You do have the option to change the optional levies that are listed. So the $9.02 is a combination of the police and library levy. This is the full levy rate that you are operating on, similar to what we did last year. As in previous years, you could elect less for the optional levies, but you cannot do more than the $9.02.
Chair, may I?
Go ahead.
Can you tell me what we had 2 years ago? Because I believe last year we took the max amount. What did we operate on a couple years ago?
Give me just a second to pull that up.
Thanks.
I am. The combined local option levy rate when previously in 2023, you did $7.47 per thousand for the local option levy rates.
And the other one you said stays the same regardless.
Correct. The
Awesome.
$1.41 stays the same no matter what. Like I said, for that one as well, you can elect to take less, but you cannot do more than the $1.41.
Thank you.
Any other questions that I can answer?
You guys can ask questions too. Oh, okay.
If there is no more discussion, then you can call for a roll call vote. That would be the next option if there is no more discussion.
Anybody? No?
I'll call for the vote.
Any objections, Chair?
No.
Okay. Counselor Bronson,
Yes.
Counselor Hagee,
Yes.
Counselor Richards, Counselor Sanchez,
Yes.
President Pro Tem Thorstad,
Yes.
Mayor Coleman,
Yes.
Committee Member Miller,
Yes.
Committee Member Dahl,
Yes.
Counselor Augsburger.
Yes.
Okay, the next and last portion of the Budget Committee meeting would be the approval of the proposed budget as presented yesterday and tonight. The motion on the floor for apologize. That should say 25, 26. So the motion to approve expenditures for fiscal year 25, 26 in the amount of $41,289,940, and to establish the maximum expenditures for each fund as shown in the proposed budget. That would be the motion to read, should the committee choose to adopt the proposed budget.
Chair, can I ask a question?
Go ahead.
If I want to make an amended motion to transfer some of that money towards the Weddell Bridge, then how would I change the value on there for like, if we had $200,000 to put inside of there?
Let's see. So if you would like to move $200,000,
I really would like to have 250,000 in there, and then maybe that could be used for some sort of match. I don't know, 50-50, but I don't have the exact value in my head.
where I would point you to as a committee to move funds is that within Fund 207, you have several departments, one of those being the PATH Program Department. Currently in the proposed budget, you have $1,055,000 in unappropriated funds. If the committee decides to approve that change, you could move $200,000 or $250,000 from that $1 million into the Weddell Bridge Department.
Right now there's 80, so I would like it to be 250 if people agree with me or not. I don't know. So that would be, I don't know,
Oh,
130,
170.
170. There we go.
Madam Chair, I'm all fine with that idea.
So to change the proposed budget would be an additional motion. You could do it a couple different ways. You can elect to approve the budget at the said motion amount with the recommended change for the $250,000 or $170,000. That could be one motion. The other option is you could just change the expenditure to add $170,000 to that $41 million on the board. We would in turn as staff create a new proposed budget for the city council to adopt in May or June, whenever that comes present, that would show that change.
I think I would like to make the motion as proposed with the amendment for the 170,000 from the unallocated funds for the Weddell Bridge.
So to move from unappropriated.
Unappropriated, not inappropriate, unappropriate. Please.
I'll second that.
Second.
Sorry.
Discussion? My question is this the only place that we can move funds? And we don't know what the cost is going to be. We don't know what the grant amount, we don't know what the time frame is. We haven't seen an engineering report on this. So I'm not questioning the movement of money but I just question are we reacting too soon on something without all the facts? And in this, if we don't do it now for this budget year, are we penalizing ourselves, or do we still have a way to the means available to us to cover whatever the cost is at a later time?
Yep.
I'm just concerned about putting through a number on something when we don't have the facts, but I don't want to prevent us from being able to spend the adequate funds to do the fix on it, but we don't know what it is. And I myself would like to see the engineering specs. I'm a wood guy. I understand how these things are built. I work in the mills that actually cut those long timbers. So I want to see more to really understand what the problem is. So my question is, back to the money. Is this the only way we could cover the costs in the next 12 months of the fiscal year?
So there are a couple answers to your question of ways to get to yes. The easiest way is what the counselor suggested is moving funds from unappropriated to the $170,000 into an appropriated accounts such as materials and services or capital outlay. So that is what the motion is doing right now, is that it's moving $170,000 from unappropriated funds. This is not the only fund that you can pull money from. You do have contingency amount money that you could pull from in the general fund to help increase that amount when you get to that point. What Councilor Sanchez has done in moving unappropriated funds is she has increased the available funds to spend for next fiscal year. If you remember from our conversation yesterday, unappropriated funds are basically funds that you cannot touch unless there is a natural disaster. So by her allocating those extra funds, that makes it available to spend. It does not mean that you are going to spend that $170,000, just like what we're approving tonight as a proposed budget. You're approving $41 million in appropriations levels. So it doesn't mean that we're going to spend $41 million. Typically, you spend a little bit less. So if the situation comes up in the future, and let's say the project is going to cost $750,000 and you have to come up with $750,000, you've got $250,000. Your only option in this next fiscal year would be to take those funds and basically borrow from another fund to transfer money into the Weddle Bridge Department and Fund in 207. So you could take a loan, internal loan for yourself from the general fund, or you could take it from water, sewer, and possibly storm, and borrow those funds and then pay them back in the next fiscal year through the budgeting process. The easiest way is to do what Councilor Sanchez did and just move more money into appropriations so that it's available to spend. Whether that amount is $250,000 or $500,000, that would be up to the city council to what you think is appropriate.
And further question on that. So that is, the time frame is one fiscal year.
Correct.
And if we don't use it in that one fiscal year, it's already essentially marked for the Weddle Bridge project.
Correct. If that project doesn't happen next fiscal year and you think, and by the time you get everything lined up and ready, it's going to happen the following year, the money that you've already set aside is already technically appropriated. When we do this budget process next year, it would be part of your beginning fund balance next year to have available.
It's in the fund balance, but not the fund balance for the bridge.
It would be the fund balance for the bridge.
For the bridge. Okay.
So the way your fund is set up is within Fund 207, which is your community enhancement fund, you have a specific department for each program. And each program has their own beginning fund balance, their own revenue, and their own expenditures. So by Councilor Sanchez moving the $170,000 over, if you didn't spend that, that would increase the beginning fund balance for the following year in that specific department allocated specifically for Weddle Bridge.
Okay, that's all good. Thank you.
May I speak, Chair?
Go ahead.
Okay, so for me, and I think a lot of the counselors and the community members, we don't have a lot of remaining historical pieces. And so when we lost the bandstand, it was devastating to me. The city hall's probably not going to be sustainable. And so for me and others, I believe doing as much as we can to keep the little bit that we have left is just super critical. So I hope that people agree. Thank you.
Chair, may I?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I completely agree with Councilor Sanchez on this one. And I have seen things in the community rot, actually, just physically rot. And I want to make sure that we as a city are honoring those things that are historic in our community, but also especially the iconic bridge, Weddle Bridge. And we don't know how much it's going to cost, but to be prepared for anything that might come about, especially if we're going to be doing some engineer costs on that. I think we appropriating that money actually is a great idea, so we can have it available if need be. And I like where you suggested we choose that from, because I was going to ask about general fund, but I prefer to bring it from the PATH program. So thanks for that suggestion, Matt.
Yeah. If you do have to loan money to yourself from the general fund, you have $1.5 million in contingency in the general fund that you could potentially move and transfer and then pay back, or however you want to do that.
Yeah, I don't like borrowing from other funds.
Well, the nice thing about the general fund is it is for general services altogether.
Mhm, I
So if
understand.
you as a council decide that it's not going to be a loan and you're just going to give money to the Weddell Bridge Department of Program, you can decide to do that as a council. Now that will affect your cash flow and
Mhm.
operating expenses and revenue and the whole forecast of the general fund, depending on how much that is. So that's something to take into consideration if that's a decision you choose to discuss in the future. But you do have 1.5 million in your general fund that is available and appropriated for use for situations that come up that are you're not anticipating.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, yeah,
Go ahead.
I just, being the liaison for the Parks Department, I think if we had this money in that account to help spur any grants, they've been talking about fundraising ideas and just having this much money in there to kind of spur that movement and kind of get the ball rolling for everything. I think that'd be a great idea.
So if there's no more, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, just telling. I'm telling the chair to vote. Let's go.
So am I calling for a vote on this? Okay. Cicely?
Counselor Hagee,
Yes.
Counselor Richards,
Yes.
Counselor Sanchez,
Yes.
President Pro Tem Thorstad,
Yes.
Mayor Coleman,
Yes.
Chair Miller,
Yes.
Committee Member Dahl,
Yes.
Counselor Augsburger,
Yes.
Counselor Bronson.
Yes.
Congratulations. And I'll turn it back over to the chair.
Okay. All done. Okay, so we'll adjourn this meeting at 5:29.
Yeah.
Good job.
I hope that meant.
Spicy.
Every department to present.